King Charles III and the Queen Consort of the United Kingdom visit Colchester. King Willem-Alexander and Queen Maxima of the Netherlands begin their state visit to Slovakia. Sheikha Moza of Qatar meets with the Prime Minister of Bangladesh in Doha. Queen Mathilde of the Belgians attends a gala performance in Antwerp. Crown Princess Mary of Denmark participates in a meeting with the Maternity Foundation in Copenhagen. And the Swedish Royal Court announces that Princess Madeleine of Sweden and her family will move back to Stockholm. All this and much more coming up next on your Royal Daily News. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Alexandra, and this is your Royal Daily News for March 7th, 2023. In Stockholm, the Swedish Royal Court announced that Her Royal Highness Princess Madeleine of Sweden and her husband, Mr. Christopher O'Neill, and their 3 children will return to Sweden in August 2023. Quote, Princess Madeleine and Mr. Christopher O'Neill have decided that their family shall relocate to Sweden indefinitely. Princess Leonor and Prince Nicholas will begin elementary school in Stockholm in the autumn. Princess Adrian will start preschool. The family will take up permanent residence in an apartment at the Royal Stables in Stockholm. End quote. According to Ms. Margareta Thorngren, head of communications for the Swedish Royal Court, the princess and Mr. O'Neill were, quote, keen that the children have a Swedish upbringing for now, end quote. Thus the reason for the move. Meanwhile, His Majesty King Carl Gustaf of Sweden and Her Royal Highness Crown Princess Victoria of Sweden participated in a Foreign Affairs Committee meeting at the Kungliga Slottet. The Foreign Affairs Committee, which meets at the invitation of the government, is the consultative body between Parliament and the government, with His Majesty the King as chairman. In the Swedish Constitution, it states the, quote, government must continuously keep the Foreign Affairs Committee informed about the foreign policy conditions that may have significance for the kingdom and consult with the committee about these as often as necessary, end quote. In Oslo, His Majesty King Harald V of Norway held an audience with the Commandant General of the Royal Marines and the Deputy Chief of the British Defence Staff, General Gwyn Jenkins, at the Royal Palace. In the afternoon, His Majesty the King, accompanied by the Chief of Defence Staff, Vice Admiral Elizabeth Natvig, attended a briefing on the Norwegian Armed Forces Winter Military Training Exercise, known as Joint Viking 2023, at Akershus Fortress. Meanwhile, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Haakon of Norway attended the same briefing via video conference call, as well as witnessed the Joint Viking 2023 Winter Military Training Exercise in Bardufoss. In Copenhagen, Her Royal Highness Crown Princess Mary of Denmark participated in a roundtable discussion with the Maternity Foundation and the UNFPA, where she was briefed on the latest global figures for maternal mortality. In a statement, the Crown Princess said, quote, it was sad and frustrating to learn that the numbers, despite some positive progress, are not far from the numbers I was met with in 2008. It is difficult to understand when this kind of death can be prevented and avoided in the vast majority of cases. Globally, there is a need for greater focus and accelerated action in broad partnerships, because no woman should risk losing her life by giving life. Signed, the Crown Princess, end quote. In Madrid, Their Majesties King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia of Spain attended the 21st In Memoriam concert held at the Auditorio Nacional de Música. The annual concert is held in memory of victims of terrorism. The concert is usually held on the eve of March 11th, the day when 193 innocent people died as a result of a terrorist act that took place in Madrid in 2004. This evening, RTBE Symphony Orchestra and Choir, with Mr. Pincha Steinberg conducting, will perform various works, including Carmina Burana by Carl Orff. In Brussels, His Majesty King Philippe of the Belgians held an audience this morning at the Palais Royal with the Commissioner of the European Commission in charge of employment and social rights, Mr. Nicholas Schmidt. In the afternoon, His Majesty the King hosted a roundtable discussion with Belgian government officials who attended the COP15 United Nations Biodiversity Conference, which took place in Montreal, Canada, last December. According to the Belgian Royal Court, the discussions focused on the, quote, historic agreement reached in Montreal to stop the biodiversity removal and its consequences for Belgium, end quote. Last evening in Antwerp, Her Majesty Queen Mathilde of the Belgians attended the first edition of the Dance and Ballet Gala entitled Time to Dance, held at the Queen Elizabeth Hall. Created by the former Opera Ballet Vlaanderen principal dancer Mr. Wim van Lessen, Time to Dance, quote, brings together the best dancers in the world on stage for a grandiose show that celebrates the most beautiful ballets created by the greatest choreographers. The dance gala will introduce and excite young audiences to the beauty and skill of classical, neoclassical, and modern ballet, end quote. Last evening's gala also witnessed the launch of the Dancer Funds Foundation. Money raised during last evening's event will be donated to the new foundation. The purpose of the Dancer Funds Foundation is to provide a source of sponsorship to encourage talented dancers in the development of their careers. Mr. van der Lessen is, quote, also there to actively identify and support future talent through mentoring programs and specialized training, end quote. In Bratislava, Their Majesties King Willem-Alexander and Queen Maxima of the Netherlands began their 3-day state visit to the Republic of Slovakia. The day began at the airport where Their Majesties were warmly welcomed by the Dutch ambassador to Slovakia and former private secretary to Her Majesty the Queen, Miss Gabriella Sansisi, and other government officials. Thereafter, Their Majesties arrived at the presidential palace where they were warmly welcomed by the President of the Republic of Slovakia, Ms. Zuzana Kapitova. Once the inspection of the guards of honor took place and the national anthems were played, President Kaputova ushered Their Majesties into the presidential palace, where they posed for the press, signed the Book of Honor, and attended a reception held in their honor. Prior to noon, Their Majesties arrived at the Gate of Freedom in Devon. Whilst there, they placed a wreath at the memorial and held a moment of silence. Later in the afternoon, Their Majesties, the President, and the Mayor of Bratislava were given a guided tour through the historic city center. During their tour, Their Majesties visited the monument to investigative journalist Mr. Jan Kuchniak and his fiancée Martina, who were brutally murdered in 2018. Thereafter, Their Majesties participated in a meeting with, quote, Slovakian media, government representatives, the police, and judiciary about the importance and preservation of the freedom of the press, as well as the protection of journalists, end quote. In the evening, a gala state banquet was held in Their Majesties' honor and hosted by the President of the Republic of Slovakia. In Tokyo, Their Imperial Majesties, Emperor Naruhito and Empress Masako of Japan, held an audience this morning with the President of Romania, Klaus Werner Iohannis, and the First Lady, Carmen, at the Imperial Palace. According to the Imperial Household Agency, the 35-minute meeting focused on, quote, cultural exchanges between Japan and Romania and exchange projects for high school students, end quote. President Iohannis also spoke about the war in Ukraine and informed the emperor that as a, quote, neighboring country, he was supporting the displaced from a humanitarian perspective, end quote. The emperor expressed his respect for the president and said, quote, I sincerely hope that peace will return as soon as possible, end quote. In Bangkok, Their Majesties King Rama X and Queen Sothita of Thailand, accompanied by Her Royal Highness Princess Avira Vanavari of Thailand, presided over the royal ceremony of changing of the seasonal attire for the Emerald Buddha into summer attire at the Grand Palace. In Amman, His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan held an audience with the Chief of Staff of the Italian Army, Lieutenant General Pietro Sereno at Al Hussein Palace. During the meeting, discussions focused on the strong ties between Jordan and Italy, ways to bolster military and defense cooperation, and the latest regional and international developments. Meanwhile, Her Majesty Queen Rania of Jordan took to social media today to give an update on her daughter, Her Royal Highness Princess Iman bint Abdullah II of Jordan's gathering with friends this evening. Quote, "Final touches before Iman's henna party tonight." End quote. The princess is wearing a custom gown by Jordanian designer Miss Rima Dabor, and the belt is the same one used by Her Majesty the Queen on her wedding day, according to Vogue Arabia. And also, for those of you who may not know, a henna party usually takes place a week before the wedding, and it's essentially the equivalent of a bridal shower in the West. During the henna party, gifts are presented to the bride, which includes jewelry or clothing items that will be worn by the bride during the wedding ceremony. At the Dead Sea, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Al Hussein bin Abdullah II of Jordan, deputizing for His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan, the Supreme Commander of the Jordan Armed Forces Arab Army, accompanied by His Royal Highness Prince Rashid bin Al Hassan of Jordan, attended the opening of the 10th edition of the International Conference on Royal Medical Services, held at the King Hussein bin Talal Convention Center. Held under the theme Global Challenges and Sustainable Development in Health, the 4-day conference will gather over 8,000 experts in various medical disciplines with the aim of exchanging knowledge and expertise. The conference features 450 scientific lectures, sessions, and workshops, including a live-streamed surgeries for educational purposes. On the sidelines of the conference, the Crown Prince inaugurated the Jordan Health Exhibition and was briefed on the latest medical equipment and technologies on display, according to the Royal Hashemite Court. In Doha, Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser of Qatar, as chairwoman of the Education Above All EAA Foundation and Silatech Organization, held an audience this afternoon with the Prime Minister of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, Her Excellency Hasina Wajed. The Prime Minister is currently participating in the 5th United Nations Conference on the Least Developed Countries, held at the Qatar National Convention Center. During today's meeting, discussions focused on the current EAA projects in Bangladesh, in addition to means of cooperation with Silatech in the fields of employment and vocational training. In Abu Dhabi, His Highness Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the United Arab Emirates, held an audience this afternoon with the President of the Republic of Poland, Mr. Andrzej Duda, at Al Shanti Palace. During the meeting, 2 memoranda of understanding were announced between the United Arab Emirates and Poland, with the first MOU signed in the field of energy and the second on the exchange of experiences in the field of artificial intelligence and digital economy. His Highness and the President also discussed and reviewed various aspects of cooperation, stressing their, quote, joint keenness to expand economic trade and development ties between Abu Dhabi and Poland, especially in the vital fields and sectors such as food security, renewable energy, agriculture, transport, tourism, space, and others. End quote. In Lisbon, His Royal Highness Dom Afonso de Braganza, Prince of Beira, participated in the procession of Our Lord of the Passion of Graça, organized by the Royal Brotherhood of the Holy Cross and Stations of the Cross of Graça. Held every year on the second Sunday of Lent, the procession is one of the, quote, oldest and most important religious processions, which has taken place uninterruptedly since 1587, end quote. In Paris, Her Royal Highness Princess Maria Olympia of Greece attended the Miu Miu Fall-Winter 2023-2024 Women's Pret-a-Porter fashion show on the final day of Paris Fashion Week. Which is good news, because that means no more filler news about royals attending fashion shows. I thought you'd all be happy about that. Meanwhile, in Windsor, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales presided over an investiture ceremony at Windsor Castle. And finally, Their Majesties King Charles III and the Queen Consort of the United Kingdom made a one-day official visit to Colchester to mark its recently awarded city status. According to Buckingham Palace, Colchester, quote, officially became a city in November 2022, having been awarded the status during Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee celebrations, end quote. Today's events included a visit to the Colchester Castle Museum, where they met with residents, school children, and community groups. A visit to the Colchester Zoo, where Their Majesties, quote, unveiled the name of the zoo's newest addition, a baby white rhino to be called Dara, which means beautiful in Swahili, end quote. And a stop at the Colchester Library, where Their Majesties met with volunteers and library visitors, as well as a group of, quote, special guests who have been exploring the magical world of books in the library's Literacy Corner, end quote. And there you have it. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will be back tomorrow on Wednesday, March 8th, with all the latest royal news. Until then, I wish you all a wonderful Tuesday evening and a great day tomorrow. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Okay, take care, everyone. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.